Hey, Jack. Are you busy? Could you get me my water?
I'm almost done with my yard house.
Nice.
Besides for some small details. Here you go. No beer? Just kidding.
Too early.
Not yet.
How you doing?
Why are you in Chris Torres' spot?
Oh, because I don't know how to work all this stuff.
That's so funny.
I know. Isn't that funny?
Hi, it's Chris Torres. Who the hell is Mike Card?
Hey, everybody knows me.
Give me a hug.
No, I'm kidding. How are you?
How are you?
Good. How your teeth feel? Are they sore?
Well,
Yeah, I can tell. You're a little quieter than usual.
I got used to it super quick though. This is where I put this on.
Hey, Jeff.
Hey, can you
How
hear
you
me?
doing? Yeah, I can hear you. How are you doing?
Pretty good.
I bet the weather's a hell of a lot better there than it is here.
It's about 80 degrees here today.
You don't want to know what it is here.
Well, I'm gonna be there in a week, so.
Yeah, you will be. That's right. Yeah, it's about 35 degrees, and we got 3 inches of snow overnight last night after 2 inches of rain yesterday during the day.
Lovely.
So yeah, welcome to Chicago, my friend. Well, hey, thanks so much for being willing to come on with me. I'm going to do a quick intro, and then we'll get right to it so that we can minimize the amount of time that you got to be on here. So
right.
appreciate you coming on with us. We obviously follow your work, and the daily stuff that you put out is just fantastic. So we're really excited to have you be back with us. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Fantasy Baseball Beat. We're giving you a little bit of a curveball today. It's Mike Carter actually hosting today. Torres and Dave will be with me later. We moved up our time to interview our special guest this week because of the spring training schedule out in Arizona. We have with us today Jeff Fletcher, who has been on with us before, was on with us last year. If you don't know Jeff's work, you should really change that. He's a fantastic writer. He works at covers the Los Angeles Angels for the SoCal News Group. His Twitter or X handle, however you want to call it, is at Jeff Fletcher OCR. And he's also the author of Showtime, the inside story of Shohei Ohtani and the greatest baseball season ever played. Although I guess probably Ohtani might have something to say a little bit about that with the year that he had last year. But Jeff, it's great to have you back on the show. Thanks for being with us. How are you doing today?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we're really excited to talk about the Angels. A really fascinating team, and I'm sure you probably feel the same way covering them on a daily basis. Jeff, you had a tweet the other day, I think it was yesterday, where you asked manager Ron Washington about Joe Adell. And Joe Adell is a player that has widely been praised and also excoriated in the fantasy baseball circles for being kind of labeled as a guy who has a lot of potential but hasn't really quite hit on all cylinders yet. Do you think that this is his last chance to really prove that he's a starter on the team? And what do you expect from him this season?
Yeah, he's probably, he's out of options again this year. Last year, they basically gave him, 500 at bats or so to really see what he could do. And he started off really slow. He changed his swing a little bit at the middle of the year and then was better afterwards. But, spring training, he's still not really looked that great for most of the time. I think they're definitely going to give him the opportunity again because they don't really have another center fielder. It's him and Mickey Moniak. And I think that Mickey Moniak has also got some issues where he hasn't really met his potential. So those guys are going to get the opportunities, and they're just going to go with whoever's hot between the two of them. So that would be the best case scenario for the Angels. The worst case scenario is, of course, that Mike Trout gets hurt again, and then both of them. So the Angels are hoping they can choose between the one of them that is the hottest and have Mike Trout there next to him.
Well, that's a really big if. That's an interesting dilemma that they might find themselves in. It's interesting, too, that both of those guys are both super high draft picks, and trying to figure it out at this level, it's got to be really difficult. You did bring up Mike Trout, and that's sort of a 800-pound elephant in the room, I guess. What have you seen from him so far in spring training this year, and what do you think is the expectation for him this year? Obviously, we want him to be healthy. Do you think that he's got a chance to be able to go back to being the player that he was before?
Well, I just talked to him about that a few days ago, and he's made some changes with his swing that he thinks he got into kind of some bad habits the last few years around the times when he was hurt. Even when he was playing, he wasn't really the same guy as he was when he was winning all the MVPs. So he feels like he's getting it back. I think the worst case scenario, he's still going to be very good. Even quote unquote worst, he was like an 860 OPS type guy. So if the Angels could get that for 130 games, they would take it. Trust me. But I think he feels like he can be back to, the 950 kind of 1,000 OPS guy that he was before, which obviously would be huge if he could do that. Remains to be seen if he can. He is 33 years old. So even if he's healthy, he's still a little older. But definitely it's going to be one of the most interesting things to watch this year.
I wish I was 33 years old. That would be a huge increase for me and good. Yeah, I do think based on what we've seen so far from him in spring training, he looks like he's healthy. He looks like he's happy. And we're obviously all hoping the best for him and hoping that he can continue to be the player that he once was. And if not, as you put it, just to be a very good player would still be great for baseball and for the Angels. Jeff, a guy that I wanted to ask you about that's a really kind of an intriguing pitcher is Yusei Kikuchi. Now, they signed him in the offseason. I'm not sure that anybody outside of your area there saw that one coming. He seems like he's a really good fit for the team. Could you talk a little bit about where you see him fitting in with the rotation and what you think he brings to the table for the Angels?
Well, he's the opening day starter. He's their number one pitcher. I think that they feel like maybe a guy like Jose Soriano might have more upside, but he's still really unproven. So for now, Kikuchi is the guy. And if you look at his career, it's been, a little bit hit and miss, but they really feel like some of the things he figured out last year when he went to the Astros, some of the way he used his pitches really made him take that next step. And they think he's going to just pick that up where he left off and be a true, top of the rotation starter and rack up a lot of strikeouts.
Yeah, he really did an excellent job when he went to Houston. It seemed like his whole mindset changed about how he was attacking. And if you look at the StatCast page, which I know you do more than anybody here, definitely see those changes in the second half. Not on the list, but talk a little bit about Jose Soriano. He seems like he's kind of come out of nowhere. I know that that's probably not exactly the case, but talk a little bit about where he is, because he's essentially their number 2 starter right now, correct?
Yeah, basically, they haven't said officially, but I expect him to start the second game of the season. He was a reliever basically in 2023, and they thought he did a really good job, so they gave him a chance to be a starter last year. And he had about a 3.40 ERA in 110 innings. And at the end of the year, he just kind of got worn out because he hadn't really ever pitched that much. He's had Tommy John surgery twice. So, they want to be a little careful with him. But this year, I think they're going to, take the training wheels off a little more and try to get him to around 160 innings. And they feel like if he can take the next step from what he did last year, which, again, was very good, then you're looking at a really good front of the rotation pitcher.
Yeah, keeping it with the rotation, you also had a tweet about Kyle Hendricks, and being a Chicago baseball fan like I am here, obviously I saw his exploits with the Cubs and how good he was for several years. He's obviously run on some harder times the last couple of seasons, but you had written that he finished the last season strong and that he's been really good this spring. Talk a little bit about what he brings to the table here and where he fits into this mix as well.
He's cleaned up some mechanical. He had mentally. There were some off the field things going on in his life last year that kind of interfered with his focus, and he feels like that's all straightened out now. So, and the Angels also, even besides what he does when he pitches, they really feel like he's going to be a great influence on the young pitchers, Jack Kohanowitz, Reed Detmers, Jose Soriano. So, and they're only paying him $2.5 million. So the bar for a successful signing for him low. And if he can just be, a quality mid to back of the rotation pitcher and get them 120 innings, 130 innings, and help these other guys, then that's a huge.
Yeah, that's for sure. I mean, I think that's we're all rooting for him here. I mean, we would love to see him be really good again. He's just a really nice guy. He's a heck of a pitcher, and I hope that he can refine that old stuff that he had and be good for the Angels. The other guy that I wanted to ask you about was a guy that you just brought up as well, and that's Reed Detmers. Reed Detmers, it feels like people have been waiting for him a long time, but he's 25 years old. Do you think that this is the year where he maybe puts some of that stuff together and really puts his foot forward in MLB?
Well, the Angels sure hope so. They've tried a lot of different things with him, and including having him sit right next to Hendricks and catcher Travis d'Arnaud in the clubhouse to try to have them figure out what the button that needs to be pushed with him is, because he's got great talent. He threw a no-hitter in like his ninth big league start.
Mm-hmm.
Since then, he's had these stretches for 2 months where he's great, and then 2 months where he's terrible. And the stuff is still there that he could be a top of the rotation starter. They have to figure out how to get the consistency. So this spring has been pretty good, but it still remains to be seen if he's even going to be in the rotation, because Jack Kohanowitz has also been very good. And I think the Angels like having so much depth that they really are making guys force their way in rather than just putting a guy in by default. So I think if Detmers ends up not being in the rotation after having a pretty good spring and he's really upset about it, then that's a good problem for the Angels to have, that they feel like they have 6 major league starters for 5 spots as opposed to some years where they have 3 for 5 spots.
Right. I was going to say, it's been a while since they could say that they had 6 starters for 5 spots, right? Going back a long ways. Shifting gears a little bit from the rotation to some of my old favorite players on the White Sox. Grew up a White Sox fan. I've been a White Sox fan for 50 years. They have Yoan Moncada and Tim Anderson in camp this year. Can you talk a little bit about what their roles are? I know Moncada's hurt currently. Not that that's a huge shock to anybody from Chicago, but could you talk a little bit about where you see them contributing on the team this year?
Well, Moncada still has a chance to be ready for opening day, and if he's not, they think it won't be long after. He's just got a bruised thumb. It's nothing really serious. It's just a pain tolerance thing.
Mm-hmm.
So chance that he's ready opening day. So we'll just see. If he is, he's going to be the everyday third baseman. Probably bat, 5th or 6th, somewhere around there. The Angels like, his defense, and they've, obviously he's got potential to be great from the prospect that he was. He's still not that old. He's obviously going to be motivated because he's going to be a free agent at the end of this year, can make himself a lot of money if he has. So the Angels are hoping to capitalize on all that. As for Tim Anderson, he looks like right now he's going to make it as a backup infielder. And if Moncada starts out the year unable to play, then Anderson becomes the starting second baseman, with Luis Rengifo playing third. If Moncada is playing, then Luis Rengifo goes to second, and Anderson is probably the 5th infielder. Anderson has had a pretty good spring too. He's definitely looked worthy of playing in the majors again, which is nice after what he's gone through. And, if he can rediscover even some of what he used to be, then that could be a boost for the Angels.
Absolutely. I think those both could be real under the radar type of players for them, and I hope that they do well there. I wanted to shift again to two other guys that are kind of up and coming there. One is Logan Ohapi and Nolan Shenwell. Could you talk a little bit about what you think they're going to do this year? I mean, I think Ohapi really is somebody that is seen in the fantasy community as a 25 to 30 home run power potential with a good batting average kind of guy. And Shenwell is kind of seen as a guy who doesn't have a lot of power, but has a pretty good hit stick. What do you see with those two guys, and how do you think they're going to fit into the squad?
Oh, Hoppy really, the middle of last year, his OPS was low 800s, and he had hit a bunch of home runs. I think he had like 16 home runs or 17 home runs in late July. So you're talking about, looking at a pushing 30 for the season, and like really first full year at the big league. And then the last 2 months, he just kind of fell off the map. I think there was a lot of suspicion that he got worn down because he caught so much. He says that's not the case. It was just normal baseball kind of stuff. This spring, he started out really good, and then he's been not as good lately. So I think the jury is still out on him. I think at worst, a kind of guy that will give you like a 750, 780 OPS and hit 23, 25 homers. I think that's the floor. And he definitely could be a guy that's in the 800s and hitting 30 homers. So Shonwell, they really like the hit tool, like you say. He gets on base. He doesn't strike out a lot. I think the biggest question with him is the power. Last 13 homers, which is probably like 12 more than people thought he was going to hit based on coming up. And I think that they still feel like there's more for him in there too. He's just really needs to not so much develop the strength, I don't think, as the knowledge of like, here's the pitch when you really should try to pull it over the fence as opposed to just punching it, into left field. So I think that as he develops that, he's going to hit more homers. I don't know if he's ever going to hit like 30 or 35. But
I think I lost you there for a second. Hey there.
Hey,
How's it going?
that's the problem with being here in Phoenix. It's too hot.
Well, we'll just pick up where we left off, and I'll do
All
the
right.
edit later. Not a problem. I only had a couple more questions for you.
Okay.
Okay, Jeff, a couple more questions for you here before I let you go. Thanks again for being with us today. I know it's a lot on your plate during this time of year with teams heading into the home stretch here for spring training. Wanted to ask you a little bit about the bullpen. The Angels signed Kenley Jansen, which again outside of California came as a surprise to many people following. What do you think Ben Joyce's role is on this team? A lot of people had anointed him as the closer, and now with Kenley there, it looks like that's probably not going to be the case.
Yeah, I clearly Ben Joyce looked like a guy who definitely could be a closer, but he's only pitched about 44 innings in the majors, so I think the Angels wanted to ease him in and give him a little chance to, get some more innings under his belt, and learning from Kenley Jansen is definitely something that they're feel like would help him. So Jansen is the closer, and Ben Joyce is the eighth inning guy. I'm sure Joyce will get some opportunities if Kenley's pitched 2 days in a row or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of the year, if the Angels are out of it, Kenley's certainly a guy they could trade, and then Joyce would be the closer the rest of the way. So I think he's definitely still going to get some saves, and he's still the long-term closer, but they just want to give him a little more experience before they give him that job.
Yeah, that was kind of what I was wondering too with the signing of Kenley. I thought that was a team that looked like they were pretty set at that position, so it came as a little bit of a surprise. But to your point, if they do fade out of contention, he's a potential trade piece to a team that could use one of the most experienced and best closers of all time on their team. Jeff, last question I wanted to ask you was about a couple of injury guys. Obviously, we know Anthony Rendon looks to be out for the year with the hip surgery, coming to camp injured and having to get that fixed. But could you talk a little bit about Zach Neto and where he's at in his rehab and return? It sounded like he was a little bit ahead schedule. And then also Robert Stevenson, who is supposed to be back at some point this summer, I think.
Yeah, Neto is right now. He's throwing and hitting every day. He's still not hitting off live pitching. So once he gets to that, then he's going to have to start to get some at bats and game situations. He's definitely not going to be ready for opening day, but it might not be too long after that. It should definitely be sometime in April. Could be mid-April, I think, is probably the best case scenario, like April, 15th or somewhere around there. So I'd say anywhere from there to the end of April, he should be back. Robert Stevenson is up to 92 in bullpen sessions. Next week, he's going to start throwing breaking balls and changeups, and he's going to start facing hitters in April. So he's eligible. He's on the 60-day IL right now. He's eligible to come off in late May. And it looks to me, they're not going to really commit to that, but it looks to me like he ought to be ready somewhere right around there. So I would I would expect that.
So reinforcements are coming quickly, it seems like. That's good news.
We'll see.
Well, Jeff, thanks again so much for coming on with us. I know that you're in the middle of covering spring training, and really appreciate you finding time to come on with us. Tell our listeners where they can find your work and about any pieces you have coming out in the next few days that you might want to share with them.
The best place is Jeff Fletcher OCR on Twitter. And if you get there, you'll get it links to all my stories. And, I just have some preview stuff coming out next week to look at kind of the whole Angels team overall. And then there's a story coming out right before opening day. It's going to be about Mike Trout and kind of where he is, not just in terms of finally being able to be healthy, but, to maybe get back to the level of play he was before.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any more books in the works?
No, that's it for me. So
I can understand that. I think that's probably a massive undertaking that very few people understand. Well, Jeff, thanks so much for joining us today. I really appreciate your time and hope to have you back on somewhere later in the summer when it's not so blazing hot in Arizona and talk Angels and see where they're at in midsummer. Thanks again for your time today.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to take a quick commercial break, and I will be back with Chris and Dave after this break.